The airport was loud in the way only international terminals could be. Rolling suitcases clattered across polished floors. Boarding calls echoed overhead in 3 languages. Screens flashed departures to London, Dubai, Singapore. And in the middle of it all stood Vanessa Cole. Her pink tailored suit was sharp, intentional. The fabric caught the morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A structured leather handbag rested on her arm. Diamond studs shimmered against her skin. Her posture was relaxed but unmistakably confident, the kind built from years of boardrooms, negotiations at high-stakes decisions. Behind her, a tall man in a navy suit, her chief operations officer. Daniel checked his watch. "Boarding starts in 15, he said quietly. Vanessa nodded. They approached the priority check-in lane for Horizon Air's non-stop flight to Zurich. A sleek sign read, "First Class and Executive Priority." The line was short, efficient. Vanessa stepped forward and handed her passport to the uniformed ground agent behind the counter. The agent, a woman in her early 30s with a tight bun and sharp eyeliner, glanced down, then up. Her eyes paused, not in recognition, in assessment. "Oh," the agent said, forcing a smile. "The Comet check-in is on the other side." Vanessa blinked once. "I'm in the correct line." The agent gave a polite but dismissive laugh. "This lane is for first-class passengers." Daniel shifted beside her. "Yes," he said calmly. "We know." The agent looked back at the passport. Her smile thinned. "Let me see your ticket." Vanessa slid her phone across the counter. The screen clearly displayed Horizon Air First Class Seat 1A. The agent's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She tapped at her keyboard, paused, looked up again. "There must be some mistake," she said. "Seat 1A is reserved." The words hung between them. Reserved. Vanessa felt the familiar sensation, not shock, not even anger. Just recognition. "This wasn't new. I'm aware," she replied evenly. "That's why I booked it." The agent leaned forward slightly. "Ma'am, economy check-in will assist you faster. This line is strictly for first class and executive members." Daniel exhaled slowly. "She is an executive member." The agent didn't look at him. Her attention remained fixed on Vanessa, as though Daniel were background noise. "Membership number?" she asked briskly. Vanessa recited it without hesitation. The agent typed again. Her screen refreshed. And then, a flicker, recognition this time, but not the kind she expected. Her eyes widened subtly. She straightened, then frowned. The terminal around them continued buzzing, but the space at the counter felt strangely quiet. "Is there a problem?" Vanessa asked gently. The agent hesitated. "You're the Vanessa Cole?" Daniel's lips twitched slightly. Vanessa tilted her head. "I am." The agent's throat moved as she swallowed. Behind them, a few travelers in line began to notice the shift in tone. A man in a business suit leaned subtly to see the screen. A woman behind him adjusted her sunglasses, listening. The agent forced another smile. "I apologize for the confusion." Vanessa didn't respond immediately. Instead, she waited. Because apologies that came only after proof weren't misunderstandings, they were corrections. The agent continued typing, her fingers moving faster now. Daniel leaned closer to Vanessa. "You don't have to do this," he murmured. Vanessa's voice was calm. "I know." A few feet away, 2 Horizon Air supervisors stood speaking quietly. One of them glanced toward the check-in desk, noticing the tension. Meanwhile, the agent printed the boarding passes, but instead of sliding them forward, she paused again. "There's an issue," she said. Daniel's brows furrowed. "What kind of issue?" The agent cleared her throat. "Seat 1A was flagged for a VIP passenger." Vanessa's expression didn't change. "I am the VIP passenger." The agent hesitated. "Another executive is listed." Vanessa folded her hands lightly on the counter. "Name?" The agent's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "I can't disclose that." Daniel stepped forward slightly. "You just implied she doesn't belong in first class. Now you're refusing to confirm information." Several people in line were openly watching now. Whispers began. "Who is she? Isn't that—" "I've seen her on CNBC." The supervisor from earlier approached. "Is everything all right here?" The agent stiffened. "Yes, I just need to verify." The supervisor looked at Vanessa, and recognition struck instantly. Her posture shifted. "Ms. Cole," she said smoothly, extending her hand. "Welcome back." The entire dynamic changed in one breath. The agent's face drained of color. Vanessa shook the supervisor's hand politely. Good morning. The supervisor glanced at the screen, then at the agent. Seat 1A is correct. She lowered her voice slightly, but not enough to avoid nearby ears. This is the CEO of Coltech Industries. A ripple moved through the small crowd. Coltech Industries, the tech company that had revolutionized AI-driven infrastructure software, the company currently negotiating a billion-dollar partnership with European investors, the company whose stock had surged 18% last quarter. The agent's lips parted slightly. Vanessa watched her carefully, not with cruelty, not with triumph, just observation. The supervisor smiled warmly. We're honored to have you flying with us again. Vanessa gave a small nod. Thank you. The agent quickly slid the boarding passes forward now, her hands almost shaking. I sincerely apologize, she said. Vanessa looked down at the passes, then back up. For what, exactly? The agent hesitated. For, the confusion. Vanessa held her gaze. It wasn't confusion. The words were soft, measured, but unmistakable. The supervisor cleared her throat gently. We'll ensure this doesn't happen again. Vanessa finally picked up the boarding passes. I hope so. She stepped aside with Daniel. As they walked towards security, murmurs followed. That was her. The CEO? Wow. Daniel glanced at her. You handled that well. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her bag. I didn't handle anything. I just stood still. Security was smooth. Prior lane opened instantly. Shoes off. Laptop out. Standard procedure. But even there, subtle glances lingered. People recognized her now. Recognition had replaced doubt. Funny how quickly that shifted. Inside the lounge, Daniel poured coffee. You could file a complaint, he suggested. Vanessa sat near the window overlooking the runway. I could. Will you? She considered it. I haven't decided. Across the lounge, a television displayed a financial news segment. Her face appeared briefly on screen from an earlier interview. Kyron Reed. Vanessa Cole's CEO, Coltech Industries. Daniel noticed. So much for anonymity. Vanessa smiled faintly. It was never about anonymity. Boarding began 30 minutes later. This time, when she approached the gate agent greeted her immediately. Ms. Cole, welcome aboard. No hesitation, no redirection, no mention of economy. As she stepped onto the jet bridge, Daniel leaned close. Do you ever get tired of proving you belong in rooms you built? Vanessa didn't answer right away. The aircraft door stood open ahead. Flight attendants smiled professionally. She handed over her boarding pass. The attendant scanned it. Seat 1A, right this way. First class was pristine. Wide leather seats. Champagne flutes already set. A flight attendant offered her a pre-departure beverage. Sparkling water, please? She sat down. Daniel across the aisle, in 1C. Passengers trickled in, and then a man in his late 50s entered first class. Expensive watch, confident stride. He stopped when he saw her. Recognition sparked. Then something else. He looked at his boarding pass, looked at her again, then at the overhead bin. You're in 1A? He asked. Yes. He frowned slightly. I was told 1A was reserved. Vanessa met his gaze calmly. It is. A flight attendant approached quickly. Sir, your seat is to a... The man hesitated, then nodded stiffly. As he moved past, Vanessa heard him mutter quietly. Didn't expect? He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The cabin door closed. The aircraft pushed back. Engines roared to life. As the plane lifted off, clouds swallowing the runway below, Vanessa finally allowed herself a slow exhale. Daniel looked over. You okay? She nodded. Yes. But she wasn't thinking about the check-in counter, or the man into it, or even the agent's apology. She was thinking about something else. 10 years earlier, she had sat in economy on a red-eye flight to San Francisco. She had been pitching investors who didn't take her seriously. She had worn a borrowed blazer and carried a second-hand laptop. A man beside her had asked if she was part of the cleaning crew when she stood up to retrieve her bag. She remembered how small that moment felt, and how large it had become in her memory. Not because of humiliation, but because of clarity. Clarity that she would build something so undeniable that no one could question her presence again. And yet, even now, Even with headlines, even with stock surges, even with interviews and billion-dollar valuations, someone still pointed her toward economy. The seatbelt sign turned off. The flight attendant returned with her sparkling water. Again, Ms. Cole, welcome. Vanessa smiled politely. Thank you. She opened her laptop. An email notification popped up. Subject line, Horizon Air Partnership Proposal. She stared at it for a long moment. Daniel noticed. From the airline? Yes. He raised an eyebrow. Timing is interesting. Very interesting. Coltech had been evaluating aviation partners for a massive tech integration deal upgrading airline software infrastructure globally. Horizon Air was on the short list. Vanessa closed the laptop gently. She looked around the first-class cabin, at the polished finishes, the quiet luxury, the employees moving efficiently. Then she thought about the counter, the assumption, the redirection, the hesitation, belonging. Her phone buzzed. A text from her executive assistant. Board approved your discretion on airline contract your call. Vanessa looked out the window at the endless white clouds stretching across the horizon. Power didn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it sat quietly in seat 1A, watching, deciding. Daniel leaned over. What are you thinking? She turned to him slowly. I'm thinking about standards for partnerships. He smiled slightly, and she took another sip of sparkling water. If they can't recognize who belongs at their own counter, she let the sentence trail off. Daniel understood. Below them, the world looked small. Up here, perspective changed. Not because of altitude, but because of authority. Vanessa Cole wasn't angry. She wasn't seeking revenge. She wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. She simply understood something the aged did not. Access was transactional. Respect was conditional. But power was structural, and she was about to decide where it flowed. The plane cruised at 35,000 feet toward Zurich, in seat 1A, exactly where she belonged. The cabin lights dimmed as the aircraft crossed the Atlantic. Most passengers reclined their seats. Soft instrumental music hummed through the speakers. Outside, the sky was ink black, pierced only by distant stars. Vanessa remained awake. Her laptop sat closed on the tray table in front of her. The email from Horizon Air lingered in her mind. Partnership proposal. The irony wasn't lost on her. Daniel, half asleep across the aisle, stirred slightly. You're still thinking about it, he murmured. Yes. You're not going to make an emotional decision. It wasn't a question. Vanessa gave a faint smile. I never do. She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim leather notebook, the one she carried to every negotiation. Inside were notes, not just numbers and projections, but principles. She flipped to a blank page. At the top, she wrote one word, alignment. Because partnerships weren't about press releases. They were about culture, training, leadership, standards that extended beyond executive lounges and shareholder meetings. Her phone buzzed again, this time an email notification. From Horizon Air's Chief Strategy Officer. Subject, personal apology and urgent discussion. Vanessa opened it. The message was direct. They had been informed about the incident at check-in. The supervisor had already escalated it internally. The company was reviewing procedures. They valued diversity, inclusion, executive experience, and they hoped it would not impact ongoing discussions. Vanessa read the email twice. Not because she was offended, but because she was evaluating sincerity. Across the cabin, the man in tour shifted in his seat. Earlier, he had avoided eye contact. Now, as he stood to stretch, he paused beside her row. Ms. Cole, he said carefully. She looked up. Yes, I owe you an apology. Her expression remained neutral. For assuming, he continued, at the gate. She studied him for a moment. I appreciate that, she said. He nodded once and returned to his seat. Daniel watched the exchange. Interesting night, he said quietly. Vanessa closed the notebook. Interesting data. She nodded. Incidents show you culture. Apologies show you leadership. And what did you see? She looked toward the galley, where two flight attendants laughed softly while organizing service cards. I saw a company reacting, she said. Now I need to see if they're capable of reforming. Hours later, as the first streaks of dawn painted the horizon gold, the captain's voice filled the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our descent into Zurich shortly. Passengers stirred, window shades lifted. Europe stretched below in neat grids and winding rivers. Vanessa glanced once more at the email thread. Then she began typing a response. It was measured, professional, clear. She thanked them for their message. She acknowledged the apology. And she requested a meeting not about the incident alone, but about structural training, executive protocol standards, and measurable accountability metrics if a partnership were to proceed. When she finished, she pressed send. Daniel looked over. So, she slid her phone back into her bag. If they want our technology, she said calmly, they'll need to demonstrate they understand who they're serving. The wheels touched down smoothly. A soft jolt. Reverse thrust roared briefly, then faded. As the plane taxied toward the gates, sunlight flooded the cabin fully now. Warm, bright, unavoidable. Vanessa adjusted her jacket and fastened the single gold button. Seat 1A. First class CO. None of it had been handed to her. None of it had been accidental. And if Horizon Air wanted to operate at the altitude her company required, they would have to rise. Not just in the air, but in awareness. The aircraft door opened. She stood and walked forward, unstoppable.